Hello. Thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Abuja. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks. I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Osoa in Abuja brings you that story.
Implications of rising population amidst economic challenges. Nigeria's population is projected to hit over 450 million by the year 2050, a projected population that will rank the country as the third most populous in the world. This projection is already generating some concerns given its implications, one of which is the challenge of food security, especially since Nigeria's agricultural potential remains underdeveloped. Added to this is that macroeconomic instability, skill shortage, unfriendly business environment, and infrastructure deficit that hamper productivity and growth in the non-oil sector. Channels Television's correspondent Emperor Simon looks at the impact of the nation's rising population on the economic indices.
Nigeria is the seventh most populous nation in the world and the most populous country in Africa. The 1962 population census annulled put the country's population figure slightly above 45 million people. 60 years after, the country's population is estimated at over 200 million, and with an annual population growth rate of 3.2%, the figure is forecast to double by 2050, which means Nigeria will be the third most populous country in the world after China and India. However, what are the implications for security in the country in the face of mounting challenges ranging from banditry to kidnapping for ransom and terrorism?
The concept of security itself is also a demographic concept. And to that extent, there must be a close relationship between between the population and security. In a situation where you have a deteriorating population situation, obviously the security situation will be bad. You know, where people are hungry, where the health facilities are not there, the education, the children are out of school, or they don't get the kind of education that can give them a living. So that's a problem.
Experts say these challenges are further compounded by poor planning and management of Nigeria's population, with available statistics showing that over 130 million of the citizens are living in poverty. More than 20 million children are out of school, and unemployment figure stands at over 33% as of 2022, thereby increasing the country's security threats.
We need to do more to enhance national security, and to do that we have to manage our populations. There are certain basic necessities of life that need to be provided and all the rest of them. Take for instance the local government system, and it is within the society that you'll be able to get the human resource that will make up the security architecture in the country, be it the police or the armed forces. So the training model remained the way it is, even though they kept on reviewing it, but the value system in the society is being eroded, and it affects the population and it affects the security.
With population growth also comes the need for more security coverage. The United Nations recommends 1 police personnel to 450 citizens. However, it does appear that security agencies in Nigeria are overstretched.
The security agencies are presently under pressure to meet the demands of the people. That's why it seems that the security agencies are not working, but they are working. So we just have to manage the best we can under this very bad situation by training the few we have, making their welfare, and making them committed to their job. We agree that the impact of population growth on security is quite severe and enormous.
Nigeria will be conducting a population census this year after about 17 years, and this is expected to go a long way in helping the country plan economically and for security reasons.
One of the focus of the 2023 census is to actually begin to draw attention, to this security implication of our population. For example, rightly or wrongly, people have always ascribe crime, to the young section of the population because they are usually used as the foot soldiers. And in Nigeria, the last census was conducted in 2006. So what that means is that the majority of the youth who are susceptible to being used as agents of destabilization, they've never been counted.
As Nigeria continues to grapple with a plethora of security challenges, experts say there must be concerted effort for the country to leverage its high human numbers for prosperity by investing more in human capacity development of its citizens. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Joining me now is Chief Executive Officer of Kairos Capital and an economist, Sam Chidoka. Hello, Mr. Chidoka. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Now, with the projections on Nigeria's economic growth, what should be done now to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, whose target, by the way, is to leave no one behind by 2050?
Well, so, Chamberlain, if you look at the SDGs, as we call them, there are 17 of them. And it starts from all the way from fighting poverty to dealing with healthcare issues, to dealing with industrialization, water issues, clean and affordable water, energy. If you look at it, it will be clear that there is no single arm of government in Nigeria that can deal with all of these issues. In fact, it speaks about inequality, reducing inequality. It speaks about justice and fairness. So it has to be a concentrated effort of all arms of government in Nigeria to achieve the SDGs. From the local governments to the state governments to the federal government, they all have to work hand in hand and target achieving the SDGs. And to do that, we have to have specific policies targeted at some of these things. So at the moment, poverty is prevalent in Nigeria. You have multidimensional poverty of over 133 million people. Now, to correct that, you need to make the economy productive. You need to provide jobs for people. You need to provide infrastructure that drives economic growth. You need to drive the GDP faster than 3% at which we're growing right now. So we all need to come together, every arm of government and even the corporate Nigeria, to move the country forward and work towards achieving the SDGs.
How best can the nation maximize its population to achieve a productive economy?
So population can be good and population can be a disadvantage. If you look at China, if you look at India, they've tried to turn their population to a good thing. In Nigeria, we are the most populous Black country in the world. And I think that for us, we need to spin it and use it as an advantage and not a disadvantage. So we need to educate the Nigerian populace. We need to get people educated. And when I talk about education, it's not just formal education. I think we've so far paid too much attention to university education. There needs to be College of Sciences. There need to be technical colleges. People need to learn technical skills. Today, many countries in Europe and in America are outsourcing businesses to India because when you get there, you will get competent workforce, a workforce that has been trained to perform optimally because the world is a global village. So we need to invest in technical training. We need to invest. We have a young population. I think the median age for Nigeria is somewhere around 20 years, if I'm correct. And so that population can be harnessed. It's a young population. Teach people to code, teach people IT knowledge, teach people technical skills, teach people even the formal education. And when you have that population, it could become a comparative advantage for Nigeria in harnessing the productivity that could come from that population. Anything else, then the population becomes a burden because we can't even feed ourselves.
Now tell us, how does population growth affect economic resources? Can you throw more light on this?
So again, population growth can affect your ability to be productive. If you have a productive population, it could be positive, it could be negative. When you have limited facilities and limited resources and limited infrastructure, a huge population becomes a disadvantage. So if you look at, think about Nigeria and think about transportation, because we don't have the basic infrastructure in terms of good quality roads, rail infrastructure on a large scale, then it's now a disadvantage. But if you harness that population, look at something like agriculture. When we talk about agriculture in Nigeria, most times we're talking about subsistence agriculture. But we need to move that population to mechanized agriculture, where production per square meter of land becomes, square meter of arable land becomes much more than we're getting today. So population itself is not a bad thing. It could be a good thing, and there are examples in the world. But we have to harness that population. Are we doing that yet? No. So we need to start. We need to start making our population count. You can't be 200 million people and yet we are not productive. And there's a lot to be done on the part of government because you have to create the enabling environment. You need power. Power is a key ingredient to development and productivity. You need good infrastructure. You need roads. You need from the farm gates to the market gates to be able to get your products there, and those products don't rotten on the way. All of this is what government provides. Government is fixated about employment, but I think that if government provides enabling environments, employment will spur itself.
One more thing. How do we go about getting right the delicate balance between harnessing population growth benefits and the resultant pressures on scarce resources?
But that's tough. It's a delicate balance, I agree. And it's not, you can't choose one. So we have scarce resources, our population is growing. So we can either go the way of China. Some years back, they insisted that families cannot have more than a certain number of children. You can start doing that and start, informing and educating the populace not to grow in terms of how we are growing. We are growing today at over 3% in population growth. You can do that on one side. On the other side, our resources are already scarce. We need to do all we can to ramp up resources. Take example, you have low production in terms of oil and gas, which is our highest FX earner. We need to meet our OPEC quota. We're not doing that, so resources are scarce. So two things I would say. We have to do everything we can to improve resources and to grow our resources. Secondly, we have to make the population as a comparative advantage. It has to become an advantage to Nigeria. You have 200 million people. FDIs would always follow a large market, but that market has to be a market that has capacity and has ability to trade. Today, the Nigerian market doesn't have the capacity, but we can grow that. We can correct it. We can focus on the SDGs. We can focus on reducing hunger. We can focus on reducing unemployment. We can focus on improving infrastructure. We can focus on reducing corruption. And if we do all of this, you will find that the population now becomes an advantage. And then what you call scarce resources might now no longer be scarce because a productive economy or a productive population will definitely produce more resources for the same population.
All right, then, Mr. Sam Chidoka, CEO, Kairos Capital, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
The UN says only 35% of students in Africa attain minimum competency in reading and just 22% in mathematics by the end of primary school. In Rwanda, a group is creating comic books, games, and animations based on Rwandan characters and traditions to help improve child literacy. Senator Todd reports from Nyamirambo, Rwanda.
13-year-old Serafin Iradukunda is one of many students in Nyamirambo, Rwanda, who gather at a non-profit called One Help, One Direction Ihumure to practice reading and spelling. In Kinyarwanda, Ihumure means to give hope. His reading has improved over the last few months, and he is now able to read to others. The non-profit says some students do not have suitable reading materials at homes or in schools, driving some who fall behind in class to the streets. But officials say the students are becoming interested in reading again, thanks to a new material featuring Rwanda superheroes, culture and traditions in comic books, animations, and games.
The stories were written. They add more drawings, because if you give a kid a book that they know image or drawing inside, they cannot read that. So they just trying to do cartoon just through books, and I think they have started also doing video cartoon.
Academic researchers worldwide continue to study the use of comics and animation as effective educational tools. Several studies suggest that the comic books help students with reading comprehension and foster interest in voluntary reading. A creative studio called Imancreations produced the new materials for the students.
I think the comics and animes are really important because that's the environment we grew up into, even though the content was different, but that helped us to learn languages, that helped us to learn animals. I don't know, it helped us a lot.
Creators say one challenge is the lack of relatability and traditional African stories in the educational comic and anime markets. To help, they have created animations from Rwandan settings that students can easily connect and identify with. The Rwanda Education Board, REB, is pushing for local content in education through policy and curriculums. But advocates say supply chain problems are still hampering social minorities' access to materials. Educational consultant Cyprian Bunani says digitalizing stories can help more students get the kind of material they need.
If you put voice over, so the voice, so it means that the voice actor will be able to read for a person who can't see sign language, even who can't see the book.
Imancreations says it will be adding animations on interactive phone applications that can also help children improve pronunciation. Sana Anutod for VOA News, Nyamirambo, Rwanda.
It's a sight to behold for tourists and book lovers as Egypt's Port Said welcomes the world's largest international floating book fair. Logos Hope, which attracts book lovers of all ages, aims to share knowledge and hope in every port it visits.
It's a sight to behold for book lovers and readers as the world's largest floating book fair, Logos Hope, docks in Egypt's Port Said. Wearing traditional costumes of their countries, the volunteer crew of the ship Logos Hope welcome visitors with a smile on their faces.
We were very much looking forward to come back because in the previous visit was only in 2010, so it's been a long time already. But we have been told is that we had about 62,000 visitors in that time. That was about 2 weeks visit only. So we're expecting lots of people to come, and what we're expecting is really just to get to know each other, that people can come on board, that we can have an intercultural exchange, that we can share about our foods, our families, our music.
Visitors to Logos Hope are offered a selection of around 5,000 different titles across a wide range of subjects from science, sports, arts, medicine and novels in both Arabic and English. According to the captain of Logos Hope, James Berry, the crew consists of 330 volunteers from 60 different nationalities.
Logos Hope is a pretty big ship actually, 132 metres long. We say we're the largest international floating book fair in the world. Yes, so we're a bookshop, we're here in Port Said, open to the public, so you're all warmly invited to come and visit. Operated by GBA Ships, a non-profit organisation based in Germany, it continues the work of her sister ships Logos, Doulos and Logos 2. The vessels have visited over 150 countries and territories since 1970, welcoming 49 million people on board.
It's time now for a short break, and as we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, using waste to paint a portrait of environmental risk. This Congolese artist aims to minimize environmental pollution in his part of the country.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Aid groups say measles and cholera outbreaks at Kenya's congested Dadaab refugee camp are a growing concern. The outbreaks come as thousands of Somalis have arrived at the camp to escape record drought back home, stretching camp resources. Juma Majanga reports from Dadaab refugee camp in northeast Kenya.
Somali refugee Shamsa Aden is grateful her son Abdullahi is alive. But their story is one of survival and death. She was left disabled after being shot 9 times in 2003 by Al-Shabaab militants who in May this year killed her husband with a grenade. Somalia's record drought starved her 2-year-old daughter to death in October so she fled to Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp. Then, a cholera and measles outbreak killed her 4-year-old daughter in November, and cholera sickened Abdullahi, who is still recovering.
It makes me have painful flashbacks. I feel bad about my husband being killed. I feel bad about the death of my children. I'm not able to talk about them.
Adan is one of more than 80,000 Somalis the UN says have fled to Kenya's overcrowded Dadaab camp to escape drought, only to face disease. In nearby Hagadera, the International Rescue Committee's health center alone has treated close to 300 cholera cases since the October outbreak.
Because of the short rains that we experienced recently and compounding with the current outbreak, the cases might really go high.
Most of the patients are children, like Somali refugee Ada Abdikadir's 3-year-old son.
I thought my child was going to die, but I thank God he is alive. He has been given medication to help him recover.
While VOA was filming at the health center, another patient, a middle-aged policeman attached to an aid agency, died from the waterborne disease. Compounding the cholera is an outbreak in the camp of measles, a childhood virus spread by sneezing and coughing. With thousands more Somali refugees expected to flee drought, aid groups say outbreaks of infectious diseases like cholera and measles could strain the camp's healthcare.
In a context where there is overcrowding in the space available, because if we are not allowed to do proper planning, proper site planning, decongest the camps, that means people are on top of each other and this can spread like wildfire. So that risk is there. And the only way to mitigate it is more attention.
Kenya's government and aid groups say they are mobilizing resources to try tackle the twin outbreaks. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Dadaab Refugee Camp, Kenya.
Patrick Sikuru Sirimwami wades knee-deep through a mountain of plastic bottles, scooping as many as he can carry into a large sack, but this time focusing on the environment, something Patrick Kirwani is passionate about. The Congolese artist is helping to minimize environmental pollution in his part of the country. His location is near the banks of Lake Kivu in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
Patrick Chirimwami wades knee-deep through a mountain of plastic bottles, scooping as many as he can into a large sack. There is no public waste collection in the area, and the trash that ends up in Lake Kivu often causes breakdowns in the hydroelectric plant, leading to power cuts. But Patrick's goal is bigger than helping clean up. Later, he will melt down the plastic to make a thick liquid, which he uses to paint portraits of politicians, intended to be a condemnation of what he says is their inaction to protect the environment.
There have been many conferences in DR Congo, several meetings. But at these meetings, there was no mention of problems related to the destruction of the environment. No measures have been taken to protect nature. That is why, as an artist from the Democratic Republic of Congo, I can send a message along these lines.
Last month, the artist's portraits of political figures, from independence leader Patrice Lumumba to current President Felix Tshisekedi, were displayed at a cultural center in his hometown, Bukavu.
The big message today for the authorities, they must tell us how we're going to protect our environment. That's how I told myself that I must continue to use plastic waste such as bags, bottles, and use basins which I process and make drawings.
Congo, like other African nations, has insisted on its right to develop its economy by exploiting its vast natural resources. It has come under criticism for putting oil blocks up for auction in the world's second biggest rainforest. It has pledged to minimize the potentially devastating impact by using modern drilling methods and tight regulation. It also hosted talks before November's COP27 climate summit to call on rich nations to honor a pledge to developing nations to ensure fair finance to fight climate change.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain Asor. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.